So we are officially in late May. We have crossed into the back half of the month. And that means that we're less than 2 weeks away from what is expected to be another major inflection point in the Brock Purdy return from injury saga. He had his elbow surgery about 2.5 months ago. The 3 month mark past the elbow surgery is expected to be when Brock Purdy resumes throwing. When he resumes throwing, the 49ers and doctors will have a chance to huddle and determine what his return prognosis will be at a much more accurate and detailed level than initially after the surgery. The zoomed out general view at the time of surgery 2.5 months ago was 3 months of rehab, followed by 3 months of rehab with throwing the football. So 6 months total. But the one caveat was 3 months have to happen first. And then at that 3 month mark, once Brock Purdy starts throwing, it could be determined that it's either a quicker return than 3 months or a longer return than 3 months. All possibilities on the table. So the 49ers now are nearing that 3 month mark, which will determine if Brock Purdy can return before the regular season, right at the season opener, or even after the season opener. Obviously, that has massive implications for the 49ers quarterback situation moving forward. A couple days ago, I did a video on Sam Darnold. Yesterday, I did a video on Trey Lance. Well, the leader in the clubhouse, as both Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch have clearly stated, is Brock Purdy. This from the Dwight Clark Legacy Series event last week. Kyle Shanahan was asked about Trey Lance. His answer trailed to Brock Purdy because Brock Purdy has been that impressive for the 49ers. Listen in so we have some background on what Kyle Shanahan thinks of his young quarterback, pick number 262 in last year's draft.
Yeah, no, I get that question. I understand the unusual circumstances of when you trade up for a quarterback with the third pick in the draft, how you're expecting him to be the man for a long time. And we did expect that, and I still believe that he can be. You're also not expecting the last pick in the draft to come in and play at that level. That's why he was our third quarterback, despite how good he did from day one to all there. But you're not expecting it. He got that opportunity because of injury. And then he went in for 8 games and won every one, which is the first thing you look at. But then you watch the tape and just try to see why. And it was legit. He played at an extremely high level. I think our team got a lot better when he got in there. And I think his position and every position around it, including our team, and when you go back and watch it, he's a real player. And so when you talk about what does it say about Trey, I just think it's so unfair to Trey. Trey played 1 game this year.
So on the Brock Purdy front, Kyle Shanahan had to open up an answer to a question about Trey Lance on just how well Brock Purdy played. Let's put this into context. This is EPA per play in the 2022 season. I expanded the sample so that Brock Purdy's 206 plays would be eligible for the leaderboard. I've highlighted Brock Purdy on that leaderboard, and this is a really good way to determine how well a quarterback performed within the context of an offense from an efficiency perspective. And Brock Purdy, as the final pick in the 2022 draft as a rookie, was number 6. Jimmy Garoppolo was really, really good last year. He was number 3. Mahomes, he is eternally at the top here. Number 1. Tagovailoa had a good year, but he wasn't able to play enough snaps to make it through the whole way. I mean, there was obviously a lot of injury issues for Tua Tagovailoa. Josh Allen, top 5 guy. Jalen Hurts, top 5 guy efficiency-wise. Brock Purdy, right there. So he executed the 49ers offense very, very well. Better than Trey Lance did in a very limited sample size. Jimmy Garoppolo, better on the EPA mark here, but many would argue that the offense took another step forward past even where it was with Jimmy Garoppolo when Brock Purdy was the quarterback. The point, though, remains the same. Brock Purdy was really damn good last year, and Kyle Shanahan credits Brock Purdy for a lot of the 49ers offensive surge to end the season. Kyle Shanahan doesn't think that this was just a system quarterback kind of thing. And I tend to agree with him because you have to be a good quarterback to run the 49ers system at an efficient level. There's plenty of evidence that indicates this. Nick Mullins and CJ Beathard did not have good efficiency marks over longer runs of time because they weren't as talented as somebody like Jimmy Garoppolo or, in the case of Brock Purdy, as talented as Brock Purdy. Trey Lance hasn't had the sample yet for us to determine one way or the other if he's going to be able to put up the efficiency that Brock Purdy did. It is worth noting that in that same interview, Kyle Shanahan said that he thought that Trey Lance would be able to get up to these levels of efficiency had he had the entire season to develop, to work on the mechanics in an actual game situation. Obviously, Lance didn't have that opportunity. In came Brock Purdy, and over those 8 games, oh boy, he set the NFL world on fire. We haven't ever seen anything like we saw from Purdy. A number 262 pick, a Mr. Irrelevant, leading a team that, had Super Bowl aspirations at such a high level. It really was something to behold, but it sparked all these debates. Is Purdy, like the one I just said, is Purdy successful just because the 49ers had such a good supporting cast? Was it more Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, the combination of, those guys, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, Kyle Juszczyk? Was it all of that making it easy for Brock Purdy? I think the truth is always somewhere in between. You obviously want to have more talent surrounding you than less talent surrounding you. But again, if you go back and point to some of the quarterbacks the 49ers have had with good rosters in the past that have abjectly failed under Kyle Shanahan, I think that you have to give some credit to Brock Purdy, his escapability, his artistry, his command of the offense last season. So that leads us to the question, is there a reason for the 49ers to fear a Brock Purdy regression? Let's look at some of the numbers and let's visualize some of the data points for Brock Purdy last year. Right here we have x-axis is average depth of targets, the depth of throw. Further to the right is going to be deeper throws by air yards, and then expected points added. So efficiency is going to be on the y-axis, moving up and down. So you're going to want to be higher up on the y-axis on this graph. It doesn't really matter if you're left or right. That's more of a stylistic thing. You could be a very good quarterback with shorter passes. You can also be an efficient quarterback with longer passes. So good example there. Josh Allen, way over here to the right, longer passes, efficient quarterback since he's on the plus side of the y-axis. Tua was way up here. He was airing it out to Tyreek Hill and company in Mike McDaniel's Miami offense. He was upper right. Look who was upper left, the best QB in the game, Patrick Mahomes. And very interestingly, Mahomes is sandwiched by Jimmy Garoppolo and Brock Purdy, both of whom threw passes that on air yards were shorter than the league average, but both of whom were very, very efficient. So what we can take out of this is that both Purdy and Garoppolo, like Patrick Mahomes, were very good facilitators of yards after the catch last season. And that is a crucial component of the 49ers offense. If we talk about Brock Purdy hanging on to this job, that is his big selling point right now. You look at this and you see how efficiently he ran the offense with short passes. Well, it's because he was on time and on target. He was a facilitator of yards after the catch. Garoppolo ran the offense efficiently because of that very skill. And look, it's not a bad skill to have if even Patrick Mahomes is doing it, if you find Mahomes in the same quadrant of this graph. But you also look at something like this. This is aggressiveness by depth of target across the x-axis and aggressiveness percentage on the y-axis. That is throws into tight windows, defender within a yard of the receiver at the time of the completion or incompletion. Well, look at this. Brock Purdy, we knew that he was going to be toward the left on the x-axis because we knew that his average depth of target wasn't very high. But look at the aggressiveness percentage. He also wasn't aggressive at all. Under 10% aggressiveness percentage, only Justin Fields was lower. This suggests that Brock Purdy was throwing into a lot of wide open spaces. Yes, this chart right here, combined with this one right here, Purdy's dot way at the top, does reflect well on Kyle Shanahan's play calling and the spacing that Christian McCaffrey especially helped establish the 49ers offense. When you put Christian McCaffrey out on that football field, and he was one of the 5 eligibles, defenses had to pay a whole heck of a lot of attention to him. He created his own gravitational pull, and because of this, other guys became more open. Kyle Shanahan actually talked about this at length at the Dwight Clark Legacy Series event, and that's a video that I'll make at another time. Kyle Shanahan talking about linebacker matchups, the fact that nobody could cover Christian McCaffrey. 49ers pick him up in week 8. He really gets going in week 9, or no, pick him up in week 7, really gets going in week 8 for this football team. And then you have graphics like this. You have Purdy able to establish big time efficiency despite not throwing the ball far and despite not having to force the ball into tight windows. There was just a lot of room to operate for the 49ers. So, is there reason for the 49ers to fear a Purdy regression? Well, is there reason to fear that the 49ers are going to run out of space to operate to? Has this offense gotten any worse since last year as far as skill positions go? I think it's only gotten better, if anything, right? They've retained Christian McCaffrey. George Kittle's coming off of a healthy offseason. Debo Samuel might be ready to strike back next year with a 2021 like vengeance. Brandon Ayuk is going to be in a contract year. Kyle Juszczyk is still around. I'm just now getting to Juwan Jennings. The 49ers obviously drafted Ronnie Bell. We'll see where he fits into the mix. Maybe that running back room outside of McCaffrey will stay healthier with Elijah Mitchell. And Kyle Shanahan is still Kyle Shanahan. There's still big time reason to believe that the 49ers, if they scheme this correctly because of the talent that they have, will be able to operate in wide open spaces. And somebody like Brock Purdy will be able to succeed with this kind of aggressiveness profile. Now, of course, you can say, well, Trey Lance and Sam Darnold, they're going to have the same opportunity too with the surrounding cast. And that's the point. The 49ers believe that by surrounding their quarterbacks with the best talent possible and the best play caller possible, these quarterbacks have the best possible chance to succeed. It's not controversial and it's not rocket science. But the point is that Brock Purdy has proven that he can succeed on those parameters. So far, we're still waiting on Trey Lance and, to a different extent, Sam Darnold. It is worth noting that the Carolina Panthers under Darnold in those 6 games to close the season last year had a higher yards after the catch per reception average than the 49ers did. It was the Panthers number 1 under Darnold and the 49ers number 2 under Brock Purdy and Jimmy Garoppolo before him, a little bit of Trey Lance at the start of the season. So Darnold did exactly what the 49ers asked their quarterbacks to do for Carolina. He was on time, he was accurate, and he set up yards after the catch. And now the question is, can Trey Lance do the same? And can Brock Purdy do the same coming off of injury? The reason that Purdy is the leader in the clubhouse is documented track record. But the reason that there's doubt is, well, his elbow is recovering. Again, I opened the show by talking about his recovery milestone, which is slated to happen in about 2 weeks. We will start to understand exactly when the 49ers want Brock Purdy back in those 2 or 3 weeks. Kyle Shanahan will probably speak about it at OTAs. There is optimism that he'll be back in some form in time for training camp. Maybe not for team drills, but at least be on the practice field in some shape or fashion. And if that's the case, well, maybe that ramp up to week 1 at Pittsburgh will be possible. But for now, I don't think that hypotheticals are very productive. I think that they're a waste of time. And I think the 49ers think so as well. Hypothetically, anything can happen. We saw that last year during the regular season when a crazy amount of quarterback injuries befell the 49ers. Because of that, your best option is to insulate yourself with options. And when you have Brock Purdy, when you have Sam Darnold, and when you have Trey Lance in the same room, and you give them all a running start, and Brock Purdy, I know that running start's going to happen a little bit later, but if you give them all the best possible chance to succeed, well, then you give yourself the best possible chance to overcome obstacles that are unexpected when the regular season comes. So we're not going to waste our time with hypotheticals right now. Oh, yeah, what if he's healthy for 2 weeks and then Trey Lance comes in and then Sam Darnold does this and then you turn all Dennis Rodman in The Last Dance and you're starting to talk about all this crazy stuff. We're not going to go down that path. There's no point to until we actually reach that inflection point. What we know right now is that Brock Purdy is working on healing, and we know that he's run this offense better than Trey Lance has. And we know that Trey Lance has an opportunity to change Kyle Shanahan's mind in the meantime. So let's open it up for questions because hypotheticals are a waste of time as we wait the next Brock Purdy milestone. What's everybody doing on this beautiful Thursday afternoon? Questions are welcome. Mike talking about quarterbacks on cheap deals. The 49ers have 3 of them right now. Although it wasn't cheap to acquire Trey Lance's deal. They had to trade some first-round picks to get him. But from a cap consideration, all 3 of these guys, I mean, they cost the 49ers about $15 million in total 2023 salary cap hit. Here's another hypothetical. If Sam starts week 1, that might be it. In that scenario, Lance gets traded and Purdy is kept as a backup. Where are you getting this? You're just conjuring stuff out of thin air. Yeah, sure, everything has a 1 to 2% chance of happening. A broken clock is going to be right twice a day. You could throw any crap you want out there, but we don't know Purdy's timetable yet. So why are we wasting our time on these hypotheticals? But the reason I put this one up on the screen is, why are you so sure that Lance would get traded? Wouldn't that be idiotic by the 49ers? Lance's value has never been lower than it is right now because he's hardly played. So nobody wants to touch that for any sort of valuable draft capital. And the 49ers would require some load of valuable draft capital to justify making a move a year after they ran out of quarterbacks. You run out of quarterbacks in an NFC Championship game, it is a disastrously tragic finish to your season. And your gut reaction in week 1 would be to trade one of your QBs away, a guy who could potentially save the season down the road, a guy that could save you from having Christian McCaffrey to throw a pass down the road, or could save you from somebody like Josh Johnson having to be signed by the team. I mean, trading Lance doesn't make sense unless the 49ers are handsomely rewarded, and the 49ers are in no position right now to be handsomely rewarded for trading Lance because his value's never been lower at the NFL level. So that's why these hypotheticals are a waste of time, because the 49ers need to just let the options organically develop. That is the best path forward. And once we start saying, okay, this is going to happen week 1, this is going to happen week 2, when we don't know what's going to happen week 1 or week 2, when we don't have enough information, that's when we start talking about stuff that probably won't ever materialize. Probably just going to be a waste of time. It's probably going to be one large exercise in futility. Lance, Purdy, and Lance aren't going anywhere this year. I think you might have accidentally listed Lance twice. Are you trying to say Darnold? Name one other. I've heard that the Falcons valued Lance as a first rounder. We'll never know, won't we? I mean, I think that the 49ers picked him at number 3. Supposedly Atlanta, at least Atlanta really liked him. And the rest is history. That's kind of how the draft works. You'll never get firm validation that somebody else would have picked Trey Lance in the top 5 and the top 10 because you picked him at number 3. And there's not a clone of Trey Lance there for the taking at number 4 or number 5. Mike says that the Panthers and the Broncos also valued Trey Lance as a first rounder. I mean, I remember all of that draft talk. Trey Lance's stock was surging before the event. And then people finally figured out that the 49ers really liked him. I know that I mocked Trey Lance to the 49ers. I know I predicted it, but a lot of people were like, where the hell did this come from? Don't they want Mac Jones? To me, it was the opposite. When I actually did my research, when I actually talked to NFL people, instead of just believing the media echo chamber, Mac Jones was not held in high regard by the league. People just stereotyped Mac Jones to Kyle Shanahan because that was their preconceived notion. And then that built on itself. It was Trey Lance who was viewed as the high upside guy that would go higher than Mac Jones. It was never the other way around in actual league conversations. Now, the media, social media, all this hackery that we saw on Twitter, that took it the wrong way. And everybody thought the 49ers would pick Mac Jones, and there was a devaluation of Trey Lance. But in reality, that wasn't the case. And there are many clues that other teams really did value Trey Lance the same way that the 49ers did. For a first rounder, Johnny would trade Trey Lance, but that's not a reality. Nobody's giving a first rounder. Yeah. And even a first rounder, that's really tough because that first rounder is not going to help you improve your football team until 2024. And you need a strong quarterback room now. You have a Super Bowl caliber roster now if you're the 49ers that got derailed by running out of quarterbacks last year. Now, everybody that's saying the 49ers need to trade Trey Lance, this show's supposed to be about Brock Purdy, so I'm going to change gears here in a little bit. But everybody's saying that they need to trade Trey Lance doesn't have any idea of what his mechanics actually look like within the context of 11-on-11 football right now. We know he's been working on them. We know that he says he's tightened up the release, and or his quarterback coach says that his base is looking better. But we need to see how that actually works on the football field. So you're advocating to trade somebody You don't know what his actual skill set right now is. It could have gotten a whole lot better with all this work that Trey Lance has put in. So the 49ers also need to find out. They need to see how he's going to react to actual 11 on 11 competition. Is he going to regress to bad habits? Is he going to take strides forward? Is this going to look promising? I guarantee you, Mike texted me this morning. If Lance comes out slinging the ball with good mechanics at OTAs, Kyle Shanahan's going to be really excited, and rightfully so. The 49ers invested a lot in this guy, and they're going to do all they can this offseason when it's not costing them games or playing time to anybody else. They're going to do all they can this offseason to gauge the track which Trey Lance is on so they can figure out what their investment might end up being. That's the 49ers' fiduciary duty. It's not to trade Trey Lance and give up on him after they haven't found anything out because of injuries. Lance did look better. It wasn't Mahomes. Well, he was training with Mahomes, but I don't think it was Mahomes that helped make Lance's mechanics look better in that video. It was Jeff Christensen. Jeff Christensen was Jimmy Garoppolo's first quarterback coach. The guy specializes in quick releases, and we know Lance had the long looping release. So he's working with the right guy. Now we're going to see if he could take that improvement and move it forward. All right, this is a Brock Purdy video. If we had some Brock Purdy questions, that would help. I mean, I gave you guys all of these cool Brock Purdy graphics. You can see here, he was throwing to some open guys, but he was impressive. Just because Kyle Shanahan schemed receivers open for Brock Purdy doesn't make it an automatic that Brock Purdy hit them and was efficient in hitting them. You know, the biggest strength that was, really notable to me that Brock Purdy showed was his escapability last year. And then I looked up his 10-yard burst, and I'm like, holy crap. This guy's 10-yard burst was a 100th of a second slower than Lamar Jackson's. Wasn't a fast 40 runner. Brock Purdy would run out of steam after those 10 yards, but his twitchy first couple steps, faster than Trey Lance for sure. And the way that he was able to escape the crowdedness of the pocket, escape collapsing pockets, was definitely better than what Jimmy Garoppolo brought to the table. I thought better than what Trey Lance brought to the table in the limited sample size. And it was something that did help open another dimension to the 49ers offense. When you look at this and you say, whoa, well, Trey or Brock was throwing to guys that were open. Well, it's not just because of Shanahan and because of McCaffrey and Samuel. It's because Brock Purdy was able to buy himself some time so that Shanahan's scheme and the players that run the scheme had time to spring open. And that's why he had an aggressiveness percentage of less than 10%. There are a lot of factors behind this, and many of the factors point to credit for Brock Purdy. Here's another hypothetical. Do I pick Purdy over Lance if Lance plays 4 weeks, wins, and looks better? I'm just because you're watching and I appreciate you asking a question, I'll answer it. So you're saying if Trey Lance steps in there and plays better than Brock Purdy did last year for 4 weeks, do you go with Lance or Purdy? Of course you go with Lance. But Lance has been nowhere near that level of efficiency that Purdy put up last year. Nowhere near that. People need to stop taking what Purdy did last season for granted. I mean, I talked about it here. Let me put this on the screen. I talked about this in my 49ers quarterback report. This was probably back in February after the season ended. Look at the efficiency. Blue is good, red is bad. Look how good Purdy was in 22. Look how bad Lance was in 2022. Now, screw all this small sample size talk. Even if the sample size was larger, it's going to be hard, if not impossible, for Lance to be as good as Purdy here. The 49ers think he can approach that with some development, but it's undeniable that Purdy was damn good last year. So when we put these hypotheticals up there, do you pick Purdy over Lance if Lance is just as good as Purdy? Well, of course. Or if Lance is better, of course you do. But again, that hypothetical is going to be very, very hard to reach. Oh boy, we got some breaking news. Breaking news. Hold on here. Hold on here before I'm going to put down a text title. That way Mike can cut this video. Drum roll, please. All right, who's ready? Breaking news. The NFL is expected to award hosting rights to Super Bowl 2026 to the San Francisco 49ers. This has just been posted on Twitter. Ari Mayroff credits Ben Fisher of the Sports Business Journal. The 49ers are expected to host the Super Bowl at Levi's Stadium in 2026. That would be just a couple seasons from now. The 2023 season's coming up with the 2024 Super Bowl, then the 2024 season with the 2025 Super Bowl, and then the 2025 season with the 2026 Super Bowl. To give you some perspective, Christian McCaffrey will still be under contract with the 49ers for the Super Bowl that's expected to come to Levi's Stadium. Remember, Super Bowl 50 was at Levi's. That was in the year 2015 season to 2016. So this would be a Super Bowl exactly 10 years after that. 49ers, will they play in it? We've already seen the Buccaneers play in a Super Bowl in their home stadium. The 49ers got close. 1985, January 1985, after the 84 season, it was at Stanford Stadium. That's back when the 49ers team facility was just down the road, 15 minutes up El Camino Real in Redwood City. 49ers beat the Dolphins 38-16. We'll see if the 49ers in 3 years can win a Super Bowl on their home ground of Levi's Stadium. So the breaking news is the 49ers are expected to award hosting rights to Super Bowl 2026. What number of Super Bowls is that going to be? What number was this one last year? I have to do some math. Well, Super Bowl 54 was in 2020, right? So this is going to be 6 years later. Super Bowl 60. Yeah, Super Bowl 60. That was easy math. It's going to be Super Bowl 60 because the 49ers got Super Bowl 50 10 years prior. You could tell that math and logic, I wouldn't say they're not my strong suits, but sometimes it takes me a little bit longer, especially when I'm on camera, to reach that conclusion. But Super Bowl 60 expected to come to Levi's Stadium, according to the Sports Business Journal. So that is the breaking news. Maybe we cut that up. Maybe we create a little extra video on that. All right, everybody, thank you for watching. Wildcard says, I miss Candlestick. I think everybody does. Candlestick was an awesome spot. Take care. We'll talk to you next time.